I thought, I don't want to be a victim of this, and I need to get myself together. And it was at that moment I decided to take responsibility for myself and stop focusing on all of the things that were going wrong in my life, and the fact that I was told at that time that I would never be released from prison. Stop focusing on that and focus instead on what I could do to be the best version of me.
Hi, and welcome to Helping People Perform, the podcast that gives you fascinating insights into those people whose chosen vocation is to help others perform at their best. From consultants to teachers, sports coaches to financial advisors, all of my guests share a passion for getting the most out of individuals, teams, and organisations. Enjoy the episode. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Helping People Perform podcast. Delighted to be joined today in the studio by professional mindset coach and fellow podcaster. We have the men's coach. Welcome to the show, Marc Singer.
Thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Yeah, looking forward to hear some amazing stories and having some great conversations. So before we get into a bit more about what you do right now and the men's coach side of it, can you tell us a bit about your backstory and what got you to where you are today?
I can indeed, yes. I've got a bit of a story as well. I mean, my book is called, which is coming out later this year, Tell Him Back and Then Some. That gives you an insight into my story. I mean, I was convicted of something I didn't do and given a life sentence in prison in 2011. And during that time, I was in prison for 6 years. I went through a tragic set of circumstances where I lost all of my family in a very short space of time. Started with my mother. She died of cancer. 3 months later, I lost my father. He died while I was talking to him on the phone. All, in 1 year, I lost 31 members of my family, loved ones, animals, things like my family home. So it was just like a snowball effect. Everything that I ever cared about went. And it was a very difficult time, as anyone can imagine. And I hit rock bottom and decided not to be a victim of my circumstances. And I also decided at that stage not to be a victim of injustice. Even though I was in prison for something I hadn't done, I recognized that the reason why I'd got myself into that situation to begin with was a lot to do with my own past beliefs and attitudes, you see, because earlier on in my life, I was involved in a gang. I was involved in an antisocial way of living, and I'd built up a set of beliefs and attitudes which I'd kept as I went through my life. And even though I'd moved away from all of that later on in life, I got myself involved in an altercation at a work Christmas party, and I was attacked. But had I not had those beliefs and attitudes, I wouldn't have got involved in that in the first place. And that's what led to me getting wrongly convicted and sent to prison. So it was quite a story. It's quite a dramatic story. But the reality is it was probably the best thing that happened to me in many ways, even though obviously losing your family is not a good thing. And, if you could bring them back, I would. But in terms of my own mental well-being and so on, it completely transformed my life in the way I saw myself and everything else. Yeah.
I mean, I imagine it would. And, I think we could certainly forgive anyone who gave into those circumstances, particularly going into prison, being convicted of something you weren't guilty of in the first place, but then having all of that piled on top of 31 people in that 1 year. That's
unbelievable, isn't it?
It's just crazy. But what was it, do you think, that switched you? Because you said you sort of you went from that recognizing your historical beliefs and set of beliefs and attitudes. What was it that switched you from one to another?
When I first got sent to prison, I was obviously very much focused on being a victim, because obviously, you get convicted of something you didn't do, you're naturally going to feel that way. And obviously my family felt that way, and all my friends did. We were appealing and so on. But I quickly realised that, because of the nature of the sentence that they'd given me what's called an IPP, and that means indeterminate public protection. Now, that's for people who have been involved in problems or trouble in the past, and they deem a threat in the future. So they gave me that's why they gave me a what's called an IPP. It's a life sentence as such. You've got no release date. So I quickly realized that if I was to have any realistic chance of release, I had to sort of look underneath the surface and not focus on the fact that I shouldn't be there as such, but why was I there? And that's when it came to light to me that, yeah, okay, I had beliefs and attitudes which were unhealthy or which didn't serve me,
Yeah.
and maybe that I have to take responsibility for that. So I quickly realized that at an early stage. And this is before I lost the family. This is before I got to that stage.
Right.
So I did a lot of work on myself whilst in there to focus on my beliefs, my attitudes, and the things that which had got me involved in that situation to begin with. I wasn't managing myself in a healthy way. And even though I wasn't guilty of the offense, I wouldn't have been involved in that situation had I been thinking in a much more pro-social way. So I recognized that and I dealt with that and I worked on that. But when obviously I went through the trauma and difficulties of losing my family, it was a snowball effect, and that sort of also highlighted to me that I didn't want to be the victim here, and I had to take responsibility for my beliefs, my thoughts, my feelings, and everything else. And it was when I hit rock bottom. It was in a very short nutshell. My mother died at Christmas 2013. It was a year later, after I'd lost my father, my grandfather, and other people, that I found out my girlfriend was seeing my ex-girlfriend, I should say, was seeing my best friend at the time. And that was what broke the straw that broke the camel's back in terms of my mental and emotional well-being. And I just, because I'd been kept going up till that point, I had to, because I had to deal with the funerals, I had to sell the family home, I had to do all of that from prison. So I had to keep my head together. But it was that sort of knocked me down, and eventually it just all came flooding out. And for a while I felt broken. I just couldn't move forward, and I just thought to myself, I took an overdose. I'd had enough. I didn't want to live anymore. And I just thought to myself, thankfully obviously I didn't die or anything, but I thought, I don't want to be a victim of this, and I need to get myself together. And it was at that moment I decided to take responsibility for myself and stop focusing on all of the things that were going wrong in my life, and the fact that I was told at that time that I would never be released from prison. Stop focusing on that and focus instead on what I could do to be the best version of me and do what I could do. And that's essentially what I started doing. I started focusing on myself day by day and not focusing on everything that was going wrong in my life,
Yeah. And did you, you say focus on yourself, was it purely self-driven? Did you have any support externally?
Not external. Well, obviously in prison, in terms of friends and people around you in there, I had friends outside, thank God, who supported me, visited me. I had a lot of help when it came to selling the family home from friends. I'm an only child, so I haven't got like brothers and sisters. So I had friends who would help me like clear the house out. We had cats, and I had to get the cats rehomed and all of that sort of stuff. So there was a lot of stuff like that I had help from friends and people like that. But as far as anything other than that, no, it was all done. I had to deal with the funerals myself. I had to deal with selling the home myself and all of that sort of stuff myself. So it was difficult, obviously. But I just had to have that mindset where I just keep going and focusing on what I could do. So I started doing things like a degree. I started studying a degree in prison. And I was working in the educational department, helping kids, young kids, 21-year-olds, mentoring them, and also teaching critical reasoning skills and things like that.
Right.
So I started focusing on educating myself and my health, going to the gym, looking after myself better and things like that. So literally focusing on the day-to-day stuff, rather than focusing on into the distance about what I can do or what might happen, or all of that sort of stuff.
Oh, well,
So, yeah.
Apart from obviously this journey of self-reflection and the value that came from that, were there any other positives? We all see. I'm speaking for myself here, but I'm sure there's others out there. In terms of prison, everyone in there is bad, and everything's bad all the time.
Opposite.
What are some of the positives that we don't see from a prison perspective? That
A lot of people have no idea about prison. Most people have got no clue whatsoever about prison whatsoever. You speak to people out here, they've got a very, very short-sighted view of prison. They think you just sit in your cell and rot away every day, which is the opposite of truth. Most people are working. Most people are quite decent people, to be fair. All right, people commit crimes. Doesn't make them horrible. You've got horrible people, but a lot of the people are great people who have great brains, great minds, and they've made mistakes. Just like everybody makes mistakes. And a lot of people used to say, I would never go to prison. People who think like that don't know how short-sighted they are, because you could be driving your car home, answer your phone, knock a kid home, be in prison for death by dangerous driving quite easily. A lot of people end up in prison for a variety of different reasons. Doesn't make them bad people. But we live in a judgmental society where people like to label others. And, if you're quick to do that, then you're very short-sighted because you're not able to see what you're doing, because none of us are perfect. None of us are, never made a mistake, or, won't ever make a mistake in our life. So, the truth of the matter is, it's the people who are able to reflect upon themselves instead of judging and looking outwards at others. The people who recognize, and like in my situation, I was able to recognize that it wasn't the criminal justice system's fault, or it wasn't the guys who started on me that night their fault. It was my fault for getting involved in that situation. Had I not had too much to drink, had I not, it was actually my girlfriend was attacked by a group of guys. That's what started the altercation at the work Christmas party. And I came out and I started arguing with a group of guys, and they attacked me. There's 4 against 1. And I got beaten up. And it was basically their word against mine. They said I attacked them. They said attack me, and it was me who got convicted of it because I had the previous. Right. So that's essentially what happened. But it would have been easy for me to blame others for that. And so this is the thing. But in prison, come back to what you just asked. I mean, there's wonderful things in people in prison. There's wonderful situations. If it hadn't have been for some of the people in there, there's no way I'd still be sitting here talking to you now. No chance. They saved my life, a lot of those guys in there. So yeah, I mean, there were some great things about it. I do a lot of work now with prisons. I do talks in prisons, and I do workshops with prisons and so on. So yeah, I mean, a lot of the work I do now is aimed at that, even though it's not only prisons, but there's a lot of wonderful people in there who are just crying out for an opportunity to move forward, really.
And I don't know if there's a British version of this, but if you ever get the chance, or if listeners get a chance, there's an American podcast called Ear Hustle. That's based out of San Quentin prison, I believe. Okay. And I think they started recording it in secret. So they're actually just, nobody knew about it, and then eventually the facility found out they were doing it and allowed them, supported them through it. I think is the case. But some amazing stories, and it's all about the good stuff that happens in there, and
this is it.
And how do you survive, and how do you help each other in there, and yeah, I think my perception of prison as growing up has either been through the movies or through watching Porridge. And I think those growing up.
Do you know what? Yeah. If you watch anything on telly, I watched a show the other night. It's like anything in life. They try and dramatize it to make it so people watch it. If you watched a show about what prison's really like, no one would watch it because it's boring. Right. Nothing happens. But they want to make it dramatic. Like, it's violence, everyone's getting fights, and everything's happening. Doesn't happen like that. Most people just get on with their time, do what they got to do, and get out. Right. They're not interested in drugs, fighting, and all the other bits and bobs. But that doesn't sell, does it? I mean, if you're doing a TV show, you want it to be dramatic, so you want everyone to be fighting and killing each other and all of that sort of stuff. It doesn't really happen like that.
So let's move on. In terms of, you've taken those lessons, you've reflected on yourself, you found yourself outside again, back in the wider world.
Miracle.
And you've gone on and done some great things and are now helping others. So tell us a little bit about that in terms of who you help and how you help them.
Well, it was a funny way it came about, really. I mean, when I was in prison, I did a business course, and that was I did 6 years in total, and it was probably 3 years into that. I needed to do whatever to keep myself mentally occupied, and I did a business course. And part of that course, they said to me at the time, if you hypothetically, before I went to prison, I was involved in sales, I was involved in car trade, I was involved in mortgages, and I was doing all of that sort of stuff. So it was always sales. But they said, hypothetically, if you're going to set up a career when you get out of prison, what would you do? And I said, life coach. And I don't know why. And the first thing that came to mind, I had no clue what a coach did. And anyway, they gave me a sheet of paper with all the different attributes of a coach on this bit of paper. And I read it and I thought, okay, I've got these attributes and skills, and I forgot about it. Anyway, now 4 years later, now I'm out of prison. I've been out of prison a year now. And I've been dealing with a lot of the emotional stuff that I had to go through, unpacking all of that baggage after I've got out of prison, because obviously losing your family and everything, there's a lot to go through. So I was trying to find my way in life, and I had no direction. I didn't know what I wanted to do work-wise and so on. I didn't really want to go back to the car trade and everything. So I was thinking, and I had started having coaching. And it twigged something in me, and I thought, you know what, this is me. This is what I want to do. I've got the ability to be a great coach here. Anyway, so the coach I was working with, she said to me, because I was researching it, and I was going to do one of these courses you see online, like, and she said to me, if you're going to do it properly. So I thought, okay. And I went on the ICF website, the International Coaching Federation website, and I thought, okay. And I looked at all the different accredited courses I could find, and I found the one I thought was the best.
Yeah.
And I went for it. It cost me a lot of money, but it was worth it. And what they did is they taught me a whole new way of thinking, a whole philosophy and way of being, which when you live it, breathe it, practice it, and become it, transforms your life actually from the inside out. And that's essentially what I did. As I learned the philosophy, a year, no, it was 2 years, nearly 2 years later, I qualified as a professional coach. So it was in 2019, I qualified as a professional coach. And I started living and breathing this new philosophy and way of being that they taught me. And that took me time. I had to do a heck of a lot of work on myself and self-acceptance and working on my own inner demons and everything else that would stop me moving forward and being who I wanted to be. And I've done that. It took me about a year to do that. And it was just before COVID kicked off that I set my business up. Couldn't have timed it better.
Yeah.
It was a month before. And ever since then, that's what I've been doing. I've been working with people in businesses, prisons, you name it, coaching, helping people learn this new philosophy and way of being that I've learned. Yep. And transform their lives, and this is essentially what I do as a coach. I work one-to-one with people. I do my keynote talks, or I do my podcast, as you mentioned earlier. Yep. So there's lots of different ways to do it, but that's essentially what I do. Yeah. So it's wonderful. I love it.
Fantastic. And you call yourself the men's coach.
Yeah.
Are you predominantly working with men? Or is that your target audience?
This is the funny thing. Yeah. I only recently changed this. I used to be very generic, and one thing I never learned at the start, I'm a great coach, but I'm not a great marketer. So I've been learning the marketing as I was going along. And I thought to myself, I'm too generic in my marketing. Yeah. So I want to narrow down. And who do I need? Who do I want to work with? And I realized that there's a lot of guys out there. It doesn't matter who you are, what sort of background you've come from or whatever. A lot of guys out there who don't feel included in some way, or they haven't got someone to talk to. And I used to get a lot of guys coming to me because of my background saying, I feel comfortable with you. I don't feel that you're going to judge me about my past. I might have taken drugs. I might have been in a fight. I might have had this happen. But I don't feel you're going to judge me because you've had your stuff in the past, and, I feel comfortable with you. So I realized there was an opening there for people to come to me, normal everyday guys, to open up and talk about their problems or whatever it is with that going on in life. And when you look at the statistics, men, the suicide rates for men is through the roof. 77% of men commit suicide a year. That's the percentages. The construction industry, that's the highest ranking. Painters and decorators, for instance, highest ranking suicides out of any industry worldwide.
Wow.
Now, people don't know this. We focus on other, demographics and stuff, but men don't necessarily get that attention in the same way. But there's a massive calling for it. But coming back to your questions, do I only work with men? No. I work with women as well. Yeah. A lot of my clients now are currently women. I still work with women. So I would never say, no, I'm not working with you. I mean, my style of coaching is universal. I work with everybody. It doesn't matter who you are and where you're from or what you do. Yeah. But I try and focus more in terms of my marketing on the men, because I feel that there's a need for that. And, a lot of guys do need that. And especially in business, in business, when the business I work with, a lot of guys will avoid this sort of stuff because they've got stigmas attached to what they think it's about, or, but really it's just common sense. It's just basic common sense, learning how to use your mind. So you use your emotions in the right way and you're using your actions in the right way. That's all it comes down to.
Yeah. Well, and you're by no means the only guest, and I'm counting myself in amongst this as well, who've had that realization that a lot of the people that I talk to, whether you're a coach, a facilitator, however you're helping people, generally you want to help as many people as you can.
I agree.
And it feels counterintuitive to niche down to one area, doesn't it?
It's hard, isn't it?
Yeah, and just going out there and going, right, I'm the men's coach. I'm the mortgage mum is another lady that I've spoken to, and it's just like, because supporting people with mortgages and focusing on others. And it's just like, well, that's my niche. That's how I can connect, or how people potentially can connect with me. But by no means does it mean that you shouldn't come to Mark
Of course.
if you're a woman, or if you shouldn't go to somebody else if you don't fit that demographic. If you connect with that person, that's what it's all about, isn't it?
Funny enough, I did a podcast with another guy, with a really great guy, a guy called Alessandro Farello. I don't know if you know him, but he actually suggested that I should call myself the common sense coach,
Right.
because the process that I use, the work that I do, is common sense. It's not like wishy-washy stuff. It's not like stuff that a lot of guys get pushed away from. So I don't want to get involved with that.
Right.
It's common sense stuff, very basic common sense that you put, easy to put into practice. Yeah. So when I explained it to him, he said, well, it's common sense. Why don't you just call yourself the common sense coach? So I thought, okay, that's not a bad idea. So you never know. I might change again. Yeah. You never know.
Yeah, you can always rebrand.
I work with everybody.
And so how do you get help these days? How do you make sure that your performance is as good as it can be?
Yeah. Well, guess what? I've got a coach.
Common sense, mate.
I wouldn't be a very good coach if I was asking people to go and work with me if I didn't have one. But no, this is the thing. I mean, if it wasn't for a coach, I wouldn't probably be anywhere with my business at all. I mean, I've had a coach since straight from like the start, really. Yeah. I've actually got two. I've got one individual coach, and I've got a business sort of coach as well, which is different to obviously the mindset. It's a slightly different thing. It's about marketing. So I've got different coaches, but yeah, I would say anybody who wants to improve, doesn't matter what it is in their life, their coaching is invaluable. I mean, it doesn't, to me, it's just common sense to have a coach, because it helps you bring the best out of yourself, basically. And a lot of the time we try and fix problems or achieve things thinking that we can do it ourselves, but you need help. You do need help. If you look at all the most successful people in the world, this is another limiting belief a lot of people have. Coaching is for people struggling. It's people who've got problems. And this is why the Elon Musks and the Bill Gates and the Cristiano Ronaldos and all of these high achievers in life, they've all got coaches. And it's because the high achievers in life recognize that it doesn't make you weak to have a coach, it makes you successful. And that's the difference. So yeah, that's what I do to heighten my performance, keep me on track. I've got coaches, and I keep, I've also got obviously other people I reach out to and speak to, and some businesses and so on. But that's what essentially keeps me on track.
Yeah. No, it's a very interesting one. And that element of different coaches for different purposes as well.
Totally.
It can really help you to focus on the right things. Marketing, and this is one of the reasons I wanted to start this podcast, is to expose people to all the different types of coaches that are out there. Into whatever your challenges might be, or whatever your focus or opportunities might be in front of you. It doesn't have to be something going wrong. It can be something going really right now.
Exactly.
And it's like, how do you maintain that and build on it and get even better? How do you shift? You've got, is that really, you might be successful, but it might not be fulfilling. So how do you shift that mindset? Coaches can help with all of this, can't they?
You know what? I mean, I went through probably a 3 or 4 month period where I didn't have a coach, about 2 years ago now. And it was just before Christmas. I thought to myself, I got a bit cocky. Right. And I thought, I can do it myself now. I can coach myself. I don't need someone to coach me. And at the first, you didn't notice the difference. But slowly, what you see, and I work very holistically with clients. I work on a 6 core areas in our life, and if our energy is high, we're our most productive. If your energy falls slightly, then you start losing your productive, your edge. Yeah. And that's what happened with me. My energy started dropping slowly in certain areas, physical, for instance, or whatever, and that drops the energy across the board, and mentally, emotionally, and so on. So it's important to have that optimal level across the board. And if you haven't, your productivity will fall and drop. And that's what happened to me when I didn't have my coach. It wasn't a lot, but it was enough to be a difference. And so I obviously quickly went back to him. Okay, now I do need you. So yeah, it makes a difference. Definitely does.
Great stuff. And so maybe a couple of slightly different questions then. If you could help any individual or team or organization, group of people with the skill set that you've got, who would you want that to be?
If I could help a specific, that's an interesting question. Well, do you know what? One of the things I'm doing at the moment, because I was working a lot with the prisons, and now I'm looking to broaden that out a little bit. On my keynote talk, it's called Life in a Container: How to Stay Positive While Serving a Life Sentence. Okay. Now, obviously, anyone hearing that, it's going to obviously focus on the prison element of that, the aspect of that, which is why, yes, it works in prison. But when you look at it and break it down, the actual keynote itself isn't about prison. It's about us as human beings, because we've all got restrictions in life. We've all got things that hold us back. We've all focused on our circle. It could be COVID. It could be ill health. It could be poverty. It could be whatever's going on in the world at the moment, which is stopping us being who we want. It could be a business. It could be, if you've got 20 people in an office and two of those people are coming into work miserable for whatever reason because they've got something going on in their personal life, that's going to affect the productivity of everybody else in the office. So having that overall mindset where you're focused not on what's restricting you in life, not your circumstances, not what's holding you back, but instead how you can be at your most productive, like I was when I was in prison. Then what you're going to find is that you're going to be at your most productive day in, day out as you move forward, and eventually you'll achieve your goals. Now, I think that's important in a business sense, because if you've got, like I said, 20 people in an office and two of them are not performing at a level, that it's like if you've got 20 bits of fruit and two apples, rotten apples, what's going to happen to the rest of the bits of the fruit? It's going to rot them. And it's the same in an office. So in terms of the work I do, the 6 core areas I work on with people are mental, emotional, physical, social, environmental, and spiritual. Now, again, if something's not working for you in your life in one of those areas, it will drain your energy. That means you're not at your most productive. So I would work with you individually to help you optimize your energy across the board. So we find solutions in whatever area it is so that you're performing at your best. And then you're going to get the results that you want. Now, if you're working in a bigger in an office, say, that's the same. You've got to look at everybody individually so that you'll get helping them perform at their best so that the business is performing at its best. Now, that's what I'm looking to do in terms of my keynote talks. I'm looking for more opportunities to move into that so that I can help more people get the best out of their groups rather than just an individual basis. So that's essentially, if I could help anybody, an organization or business, that's what I would do. I would be looking to help people move forward and increase their productivity, whether it be in their personal life or at work.
No, I
that's
remember
what I do.
from one of our initial chats, when we talked about that life in a container bit. It's that container doesn't, in your history, it's been a prison cell, but actually that container can be anything from it's limiting beliefs essentially, isn't it? That's
yes,
that can be.
It's human nature, though, isn't it? I mean, we all do it. I mean, if like something goes, we watch the news, for instance. It's easy to suddenly start thinking, "Oh God, the world's going to end," and there's no point me even. That drops your energy somehow. If you're feeling like, you're less likely to get up in the morning and be 100% focused on whatever it is you want to work on or do. And all of these things affect us. So if you're focusing on your circumstances don't determine where you go in life. My story tells you that. It literally merely determines where you start. And, if we can focus only on ourselves and how we can be our most productive, it doesn't matter what's going on around you. You can still be successful. And that's the message, really, about what I do.
Brilliant. And then if we were to flip that round then, if you were able to sit down and have a drink, have a cup of coffee, have a meal with somebody that you think you could really learn from and you'd love to just sit down and absorb their wisdom, who would you want that to be?
Oh, who would I want that to be? There's a few, actually, but Elon Musk would probably be one of them. I love him. I think I've got a lot of respect for what he does in terms of business. I tell you what, a guy called what's his name? Sadhguru. Have you heard of him?
I've heard the name. I
He's a
don't know
visionary from India. He's a wonderful guy. I listen to him, and he's the most inspirational guy you'll ever see or listen to. And he's just he's unbelievable. So yeah, him. Right. So it'd be a toss up between Elon Musk on the business side of things. I'd get some business tips off him. But from a mindset perspective, I think it would be Sadhguru. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I think everyone should check him out. He's brilliant.
Oh, well, I'll make a note for myself here, and I'll have a look at that one. Brilliant. Okay, and how do people find out more? If people want to engage you, and I always do this with all of my guests, I actively encourage our listenership. if you want to engage with these guests, the reason people come on these podcasts and put themselves out there is they want to engage with people. So if people want to engage with you and find out more, where do they go? How do they contact you?
Well, everybody. I mean, everywhere. I mean, normally my website is the first place, but it's down at the moment. I'm getting a WordPress one done as we talk, so that'll be up again in about 2 weeks, please God. Okay. So by the time this goes live, it'll hopefully be up. So it'll be my website. But I also do my podcast, which I've mentioned before. That's on Facebook. It's on YouTube. So you can get me either on Facebook or my business page on Facebook or YouTube, or you can get me on LinkedIn. Or you can contact me directly by email or phone, whatever it is. But yeah, most of my stuff is either on my business page, Facebook, YouTube, or LinkedIn. Yeah.
Brilliant. And what's the website, just so that people know?
Well, again, it's changed. It was www.marcsingercoaching.co.uk, but I'm going to change it to men's coaching, so that's the new one.
Right.
So I will keep. If you follow my business page on Facebook, you'll be up to keep in touch with that. So yeah, that's what I would recommend for the time being until I know what it is. Well, I don't know what it is at the moment.
Rest assured that for all the listeners, not everyone watching this on YouTube,
LinkedIn as well,
it will be in the show notes, and I'll make sure that as things get updated, I'll make sure that that's updated in the show notes as well. So have a look for those links in the show notes, and you'll find out how to get in touch with Marc. So, Marc, fascinating story and just inspirational from just that power of taking the positive out of things. I mean, I've got my own very smaller version of this, where going through a redundancy when my wife was 6 months pregnant, and finding that out and it being a big shock. One of the most powerful things that I've ever done in my life with that is I went, right, what can I control here? And I actually got some Post-it notes. I'm a Post-it note fiend. And I put on, this is the stuff that's in my control. This is the stuff that's out of my control. I can't control the decision, because it's already been made. I can control how I am viewed from here on in. I can control how I can help people through this process and all the rest of it. And that allowed me to move forward. And it's something when I'm talking to people, just help them, when circumstances, no matter how big or small they are, and they hit you, stand back and say, right, what's in my control, what's out of my control, and what am I going to do to move things forward? And your story is a great example of that, and I applaud you for it.
Since you've done it, I mean, again, I think it's worth mentioning that is because my story is dramatic, but everybody's going through the same thing in some way, and you've just highlighted that because we've all got that, it doesn't matter who you are or what you're going through. There's something in your life which is restricting you. And if you focus only on that, you won't see the way forward. So you've hit the nail on the head there with that. That description.
Well, thanks so much for being on the show today, Marc. That was a fascinating.
My pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Cheers. Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you liked what you heard, then please give the podcast a rate, review, and share. I'm Paul Teasdale, and from sausage making to banking, oil and gas to Formula One, I help people perform. If you'd like to find out more and have a conversation, contact me via helpingpeopleperform.com.